Hi everybody, it's Stewart A. Swerdlow.
And Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow.
And this is the Expansions newscast for the first week of August 2017. And we have to apologize for the missing podcast of last week because we tried to do a different format and it didn't
We had
work.
technical difficulties.
Yeah, the sound vanished. It was a sabotage.
Of course.
And I think it had to do with the content of our information, which I'm going to reiterate now anyway.
And I will give you also a brief review of what I did as well.
But before I get into that, I just want to give my condolences to the family of Christian Abraqua. He was a student and friend of ours, a rapper from Chandler, Arizona, who was very fond of our work and of us personally, and who wrote rap songs about hyperspace and about expansions and about us. And he died very suddenly at the age of 38, and it was quite a shock. And so we send our condolences to his daughter and to his family.
Yes.
Now, going on with the news. We spoke, at least I did last week when it was sabotaged, about Kim Jong-un and North Korea, but I suppose it was okay because more things have happened since then. For example, there is a news story out that says North Korea will become even more dangerous in the next 6 to 18 months because they may develop a hydrogen bomb, which is the ultimate atomic weapon with the potential to kill millions of people. And according to a Defense Department official, who remains nameless, it now appears that North Korea is working to finish this hydrogen bomb within 18 months, and it would be more powerful than the atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which of course I don't believe those were atomic weapons, but we use that as a perspective. North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un claimed that he has a boosted fission weapon, and they were one level away from a hydrogen bomb. And if this is true, it means that they have the capability to hit much of the western half of the United States, and even the potential to go as far as Chicago, and or even New York City or Washington. So, according to this story, the politicians in Washington feel that Kim Jong-un would be very foolish to even attempt such an attack with nuclear weapons or hydrogen weapon because, of course, the United States would launch a counterattack which would in effect wipe North Korea off the face of the earth. So, but if you're dealing with a Looney Toonie, they don't really care about the consequences, do they?
But what's interesting is I did report that on July 4th that he did do a missile test. And supposedly the U.S. put, secretly, that they had been watching him personally for 90 minutes, and they had the attempt,
could have assassinated him,
but they chose not to.
Because he's a good puppet to play with to make people afraid. But, and here's the thing that I think wiped out our sound last week, is I said that I believe that within a short period of time, I'm not saying how short a period of time, but soon, we will find that Kim Jong-un will be assassinated, and that North Korea will be reunified with South Korea. That's my opinion on that one. Now, there is also significance, as you know, August 21 of this year, just a couple of weeks from now, there's going to be a very historic eclipse, especially over North America, solar eclipse. And the interesting thing is that apparently in 2024, there will be another solar eclipse over North America going in a different direction. The one that's coming this month is going from northwest to southeast. The one coming in 2024 is going from southwest to northeast, so it forms actually an X over the United States. And where the X marks the spot is directly over the New Madrid fault line.
That's interesting.
Where the earthquakes of 1811, 1812 occurred, which were the biggest earthquakes in American history, and were so big that they rang church bells in New York and Boston, and were felt as far south as the Gulf of Mexico and the Rocky Mountains and all the way to the Canadian border, and changed the flow of the Mississippi River. And so perhaps in 7 years the New Madrigal Fault Line will go off, so that gives us 7 years to get the hell out of here. Then, what I also was going to say, or what I did say last week that was bleeped out, is about 2 weeks ago on Long Island, at exactly the same moment, a small aircraft lost power and had to land on Sunrise Highway, very close to the hotel where we stay when we go there. And also, just south of there, due south of there on the Great South Bay, a helicopter that was traveling from Manhattan to the east end of Long Island just dropped out of the sky into the water, and they believe it was caused by an ELF pulse, or electromagnetic pulse, from a source of unknown origin. And interestingly, one of my sons drove there afterwards to check out what was going on, and he said right along that region he saw many cars pulled over to the side of the road with their tires exploded, all at the same time. Now, do you remember that I have been speaking to you about ancient history, and that the very first beings that came into the solar system and on our planet were winged scorpions? Yes, do you remember?
I remember.
Yes, you remember, because
I
guess
think
what?
didn't you write about them in this book?
I may have. I don't
I
know
know
what I write. Sometimes I don't remember what I write.
I know we talked about it in our last September class, so maybe in this one
Well,
too.
guess what, people? In North Carolina, someone photographed a winged scorpion.
A live one?
Yes, and I have the picture of it on the link, if the link will be podcast link.
It will be posted. Sure.
And it looks like a winged scorpion that I've been telling you about from eons ago. And just last week, a man in Arizona was bitten by a winged insect that he said was a cross between a spider and a scorpion.
I've never heard of that.
Yes, and so they're calling the one in North Carolina a locust scorpion. And they're calling the one in Arizona some other kind of scorpion. I can't remember, but it's very weird. No one's ever seen them before. So guess what? My peeps have returned. The original archons are back. My people. I'm their emperor.
Is that right? You're an emperor scorpion?
I'm a winged scorpion.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing. Let's
You better watch out, peeps.
focus on the winged lion. Winged lion, I think, is
Yes,
better.
and I don't know if you have these stories or not, but I think I was going to mention them last week, that a NASA study has shown that sea levels have actually lowered in the last few decades, not increased. So that's that's from NASA. Okay, so I don't know what Al Gore is going to do about that. And as far as Florida is concerned, I reported, I think last week, on the sinkhole that opened up in Tampa. Well, now it's expanding, and more things are falling in, and I think that whole western area and central part of Florida is collapsing. And it reminded me of the sinkhole in Louisiana that's opened up and is actually bubbling with gas coming at it, and entire forests have fallen into that one.
Wow.
Yeah, and also, which I didn't have a chance to write about it in this one, but on the news it said that there's a dead zone that has developed south of Louisiana in the Gulf of Mexico, which, ironically, they've compared to the size of New Jersey, a dead zone, New Jersey. Hello. Well, that just goes on to what I'm telling you about the Gulf of Mexico. It's filled with poison. I wouldn't eat anything from there. And if you're in West Florida, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota, you got the poison from the Gulf, you got the sinkholes opening up, you just had a tropical storm. I think you should get the message.
To be careful.
But I'm going there in November.
Uh-oh. Let's not tell them then.
No.
Okay?
Don't say anything.
All right. So, are you done?
For now.
I have also just wanted to briefly go over the stories that I felt were important enough to go over again with you that didn't make it to last week's podcast. So, I'm just going to quickly go through there before I get to my news story. So, the first one, which to me was one of the biggest news story, was the fact that Trump banned transgender people from joining the military.
But what if you're already in there and you're transgender?
Well, according to the article, there was no mention of whether the military would search out transgender people already in there and removing them. So, and we haven't heard anything more about that, or I haven't in the news
Because
right now.
wouldn't that be a legal precedence if you're already in the military and you're transgender? How could they ban people like that afterwards?
I don't know, because he says they're going to ban them from joining the military because they're expensive to maintain with the hormones and whatever
Wait,
else.
hold on. You know what's expensive to maintain?
Well,
Trump.
No. But I'm just telling you what he's saying. So, and then the other thing that I did mention last week that I'm going to say again is this tweeting stuff.
I don't tweet.
Yeah, because I think tweet is really an odd thing, and I was thinking about it when we were growing up. There was a cartoon, and there was
Tweety Bird.
A yellow ELF bird called Tweety Bird. Now we have tweets.
And we also have Tweet.
Yeah, so I think there's something that's going on there as far as programming in this tweet thing, because I think it's very unprofessional to say, oh, the president's tweeting and this person's tweeting.
Didn't Tweety Bird always get eaten by a cat?
Yes.
And then he'd always have to throw
Spit
him
it out, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of symbolism here about this tweeting thing. I just think it's very unprofessional. But now that I've said that, I have to tell you what he tweeted, because we don't say what he says. Well, a couple of things. One thing that was interesting to me is that he keeps talking that he is calling what's going on with Russia, this probe for this collusion, as a witch hunt. Now, I'm always telling you about phrases that they slip into the media, which when you finally do hear it or they bring it out the way they want it to be heard, that it's kind of already in your subconscious mind. So, according to this article, he is tweeting a lot about witch hunts. So, for example, this was from last week, Jared Kushner did very well yesterday in proving he did not collude with the Russians. Witch hunt. Next up, 11-year-old Barron Trump. Now again, this is a way to put Barron's name in front of the public. They've been talking about this, and then I didn't, again, put this in my news, but there's been something circulating around the internet about this 200-year-old book with a boy named Barron, and his controller was Don, and so on and so forth.
Barron Trump, his name was.
But my thing is, and of course this is, I'm always questioning, how do we know this isn't a new book that was put into place to look like it was printed 200 years ago?
So if any of you are 200 years old and remember reading that book, please let us know.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting. But anyway, he also, Trump tweeted a few days after the first tweet, he said, quote, "As the phony Russian witch hunt continues, two groups are laughing at this excuse for a lost election taking hold, Democrats and Russians." So again, the word witch hunt or the phrase witch hunt.
And by the way, and I've gotten emails, as I've told you about, from my peeps in Russia.
Yeah.
And they think the whole thing is so stupid.
Well, it is. It's a show, like we always tell you, but we have to show you what the show is so you can figure out what they're doing, and then, don't involve yourself. Now, the other thing that Trump is talking about is this MS-13 gang. Now, we've talked about this before. You know, we have this and that. We talked about that, I think you did a couple weeks ago, that you felt ISIS was on its way out. Well, if ISIS is on its way out, then we have to have something to replace it.
Well, they're going to be on their way out, too.
Well, this is called the MS-13
They're from El
gang,
Salvador.
which Trump claims has turned peaceful parks and quiet neighborhoods into the U.S. into, quote, blood-stained killing fields.
But remember, we used to live in Long Island where they are very heavily located.
And so I want to tell you that blood-stained and killing field, all of that is, again, they're trying to put into your subconscious mind. Now, Trump blames his predecessor, Barack Obama, for allowing the gangs to take root in the U.S., but they've actually been here in the U.S. in some form or another since the 70s and 80s. And as you mentioned, they primarily come from El Salvador, where they fled conflicts there. Now, what's interesting is that the Drug Enforcement Administration says the gang's actual involvement in the drug trade appears to be limited, in some cases just to local markets. But we have a legal analyst and former police officer named Philip Holloway claiming that MS-13 is one of the most dangerous and rapidly expanding criminal gangs in the world. So I thought that was interesting because the Drug Enforcement Administration says they're very limited, it's local markets.
But the thing is, they basically attack their own people.
Yes, they don't
Never
really
care about white people or black people being attacked by,
so I think it's
the MS-13.
So it's possible, in my opinion, they might be taking ISIS out, and they're going to build this into something they're not, because they want it now more localized, because the Americans aren't really affected by ISIS in the same way that, say, the Europeans are, and those, the proximity is, there's a lot of distance there. So we're going to see what's happening, but my feeling is they're trying to build it into something it's not. And then because you're a fan of global warming,
Yes.
I wanted to remind you about this article that I read a couple weeks ago.
No.
Yes.
For me, it's hormonal warming.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Unfortunately.
California's huge snowfall will keep some ski resorts open until August.
Yay!
And here we are,
We can still
August.
ski now.
It says the unusually high snowfall from the barrage of storms that hit the western mountains over the winter is still on the ground, and in some places there's as much as 8 feet of it.
Well, that sounds like global warming
That's
to
what I
me
thought.
in August.
Yeah, it says Mammoth Mountain Ski Area and Mammoth Lakes is promoting its best spring conditions in decades.
Except that it's summer.
I know. And the California Department of Water Resources says that of June 6th, the amount of snow on the ground in the Central Sierra region was twice as much as usual, making June its biggest snowpack in decades. So again, global warming, right? And then NASA itself, NASA says that California's snow accumulation this year was larger than the past 4 years combined.
Well, holy cannolis.
Yeah.
And may I also say, and I think we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that
Right.
it snowed in Santiago, Chile.
Yes, we did.
Which is a Mediterranean climate.
Yes.
And that here we had Aurora Borealis in summertime, which only supposed to happen in the wintertime.
Yes.
Plus we had one of the coldest July nights ever.
It was like 40 degrees, wasn't it?
It was very cold.
Yes. So anyway, again.
Well, that would be like 5 centigrade.
Yeah, so it's, you know,
Celsius.
that's why I said it's silly what they tell you. And then I also reported this story last week. Again, I'm just shortening these up for you, but artificial wombs, it's the reason I think they're, again, putting this forward, because here is a lead researcher, Dr. Haggai Levine from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, who headed a study of nearly 200, or actually he compiled nearly 200 studies that say sperm counts among men from North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand seems to have halved in less than 40 years.
They didn't check me.
And they said the sperm count may lead to human extinction.
Well,
so that's to put fear into
some
people.
aliens would only hope.
That is to put fear into people. And this epidemiologist said that if the trend continues, humans will become extinct.
Wow.
And eventually we may have a problem with reproduction in general, and it may be the extinction of human species.
So what that means? Cloning.
And artificial wombs, obviously. So they're getting you set up. First of all, I'll tell you about other things they're setting you up for, but this is some of my stories from last week. Okay, here's
you had that. I was going to take that story.
No,
It's a
you
good
can
thing I didn't.
comment on it. That NASA, you probably read this by now, that NASA is hiring a planetary protection officer
Yes.
with a salary of up to $187,000.
That's too low.
Now the interesting thing to me, and this is what they always do, they created this position with the signing of the Outer Space Treaty in 1967.
That nobody ever heard of.
Right. So did they again or didn't they? Are they recreating history? Did it really happen then and they put it in, or did they just now start it? I don't know. But anyway.
Just like they said the EU is 50 years old, but the Europeans didn't know about it.
Right. Well, that's what I said about this story about Barron Trump. It could, again, the young boy that supposedly happened back in the year 200, or 200 years ago.
Right.
So we don't really know. But anyway, this position is making sure that humans don't contaminate planets, moons, and other objects in space.
Yeah, what about the other way around?
They're also supposed to help prevent any alien microbes from spreading to Earth.
I see.
Now, apparently, there are 2 such full-time roles, only 2, that exist in the world. One at NASA, and the other at the European Space Station, which is in French Guiana.
We were there.
Yes. So, according to Catherine Conley, who is NASA's only planetary protection officer since 2014, even though they created this role in 1967, supposedly, she claims that the new job ad is a result of relocating the position I currently hold to the Office of Safety and Mission Assurance, which is an independent technical authority within NASA. And apparently the job comes with a secret security clearance, and this I wasn't sure. Non-citizens aren't technically eligible.
Wait,
non-citizens
are not?
What, non-citizens of Earth or what?
Yeah, so it only protects the United States.
I don't know. It says non-citizens aren't technically eligible. So I thought, and that was signed supposedly by Gerald Ford in '76, which is the reverse of '67. For whatever that means.
So smart.
And in case you want to apply for the job, apparently NASA is accepting applications at usjobs.gov from July 13th through August 14th.
Oh, better hurry. I only have like a few days to get that.
I wish we could make $187,000
Because I know they would
a
take
year.
me. I know they would take me.
Because you speak all kinds of weird
Because I'm an alien.
alien languages, right? Now this article caught my attention. It was called "Media Trumpets the Bible is Wrong." Now, I have talked about Trump being a trump card, and we have talked about in the book of Revelation, they talk about the trumpets, right? Now we have the media trumpets that the Bible is wrong. And so I'm not going to tell you about this article because it's not the article I want you to pay attention to. It doesn't say anything more about that, but the headlines. And then I want to tie this into something that I told you about last fall.
Which is what?
Which is, I had mentioned last fall that there is a group called the Trumpettes. Which is a glamorous world of socialites who support Donald Trump.
Are you one of them?
I am not a trumpet. You can go to trumpetsusa.com. So I did because it's been a while since I thought about this thing.
Right.
Anyway, this was interesting to me because this woman supposedly who was the founder of the Trumpettes writes, "Dear Trumpettes," and now she adds Trumpsters. That wasn't there before. Now we have Trumpets
Sounds like a dumpster.
and Trumpsters, and we have the media trumpets that the Bible is wrong, right? Okay, correct, I should say. Anyway, and then in her first article, she talks about she was celebrating her 25th wedding anniversary, and she talks about the highlights to her spectacular weekend. Now, two things in the next paragraph that caught my attention. She got an incredible jewelry box and then she has this in quotes, "my twinnie." Remember we talk about twins and the significance in that and the Illuminati and the global elite. So she talks about her twinnie, Terry Ebert Mendoza, and her husband. Now listen to this, Saint Joe.
That's where we live.
Now we have North and Kanye West. Didn't they name one of their boys Saint?
North.
North?
Northwest.
Northwest. Now that was one, but then
That's brilliant. He's going to really appreciate that
I
when
think
he gets
that's
older.
a girl. Northwest is a girl, and then they had a boy, and they named him Saint.
I don't know. The whole thing was stupid.
But the issue is, Saint is a Catholic term. So you want to remember that. And Catholics, we've talked about the Pope, we've talked about, a lot of things that are tied together here. New World Religion, we've talked about the mass imprinting and where they want you to go and the phrases they want you to hear. So I thought that was all interesting when we took a look at it. And that's just the beginning of that website. So I didn't investigate it any further, but I wanted to tie that in with what's going on in the world. Now this was also a story from last week. This was about a Danish man, 25, who had cinnamon and spices thrown on him because he was unmarried. And they say in that culture, which I'd never heard of.
You turned them into a Danish.
I gotta say, he reached the milestone because he was unmarried. So what they claim that they do is they put a dust mask on him, and this, I wasn't sure about. They tied his hands behind his back. Then they put water all over him. Then they then they put spices on him.
Yes.
Now supposedly the dust from the spices turned into a ball of flames. And so the man fell screaming to the ground with his friends watching. According to this, he only had minor burns because of the water, but I still thought it was odd.
And this is why Denmark has a small population.
And this was live streamed, of course, and I've told you about live streaming and all things that are going on. And then another thing, because they want you to get used to, people being tortured and beaten and whatnot.
Well, that's what happens to me every day.
And then following that, there's another story from last week that there was a cell phone footage showing a driver viciously beating a cyclist with a club.
I saw that.
For hitting his truck in a road rage. And we're talking about all the media's trying to get your inner rage up, right?
It was really disgusting.
Now the thing that got me, because here's two hot shots, but this is my issue.
Guys.
Well, old is relevant. It was a 65-year-old man who got out with a club, and they show him beating a 74-year-old cyclist. So these aren't two young hotshots out, These
are two senile people.
They ought to know better. But the interesting, thing was their age. 74 is an 11, 65 is an 11.
That's true. Again, you're brilliant.
Yeah, so all these things, when you look at this, kind of coming together. So people beating each other and older people. So hey, if older people can do it, you can do it too, right?
Is that why you beat me?
It must be. But I just thought that was just, really horrific. But that's the imprinting. And then the next imprinting I've been telling you about is watching people die. And again,
Who did that?
This is a man, again, 71 years old from Australia, who went parasailing in Thailand. And long story short, he fell down Because
yeah,
that harness.
His wife blamed the instructor.
It doesn't matter who blames it. They didn't used to show people dying. Now they're showing you with people actually dying.
And then there was that one, a really horrible one in Florida, where a handicapped man was drowning in a pond, and these other guys were standing and taking pictures and just watching him drown.
I didn't see that one, but...
And they can't arrest them because they were under no obligation to save them.
Well, I disagree with that. I mean, I think they should be...
They're
like
free.
People who... Now, like, for example, I saw they just sentenced...
Someone should hold their heads underwater.
I saw a young woman being sentenced. I think she was like 21 years old, and her boyfriend was in the process of committing suicide.
Yes, I saw that.
And she encouraged him to get back in the car.
Now.
She did. So they said they held her accountable. So if somebody's drowning and they don't help or make an attempt to help, I think they have some accountability for what happens.
She only got 2.5 years in prison, and he's dead.
Right.
So he lost his whole life.
Yes, and she could have called the authorities. She could have said no. Maybe she couldn't, but at least she could have tried. Or maybe the authorities could have gotten there in time. I don't know. But another death thing that happened, which is again very odd, there was an ex-TV anchor who apparently had petitioned to take down this 25-foot coconut tree in India.
Right.
Well, with the security camera, they're in place all over now. She was taking a morning walk, and the tree fell on top of her and killed her. And again, they showed all that on television or the internet. So you watched it happen and her being pulled out and so forth. So watching people die, watching people be beaten up and tortured, and as you said, standing back and not helping, that I think is showing that the global handlers, that their mass imprinting is working.
Because they have all these videos of people, of the events happening, but the people taking the video are not helping them.
Right, exactly. And somebody needs to step up to the plate, make it stop one way or another. Now, I've also been telling you about how that they are attaching people to animal mind and to their animals instead of to people. Because again, this helps the isolation, it helps pave the way for artificial womb, all kinds of things. Well, anyway, there is a new Barbie doll out, and this Barbie doll walks a potty pup. So she has a leash, and instead of now holding a baby and pushing it in a carriage, she's got a dog that she can walk, and then she pushes on the tail, and the dog poops, and she cleans it up. So we're imprinting our young people very soon, to have a little dog and take care of it. You don't want a baby because it's too expensive and too much trouble.
Anybody wants that, come to my house and clean up the dog poop in my backyard.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is,
free.
I think I mentioned this on last week, but we had just started ordering for our animals online to see how that would go, and we had something that had to be replaced. It was damaged, so they wrote back to me and said, well, I'm a pet parent too. I was like, really? I'm not a pet parent. I'm sorry.
Well, some of our kids act like animals sometimes.
No, I don't think so. No. Maybe you do,
but
that's
not me. Oh, that was me.
That's you,
me.
but
Yeah,
not the children.
I forgot.
Our children are all very well behaved.
That's true.
So anyway, I'm not a pet parent. But then I see people talk about fur babies and fur baby grandparents and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, please, they're animals, they're not people. Okay? And then, this I think was also on last week, because I've got several stories along this line, which, because of, we are doing research for our next book, which is The True Reality of Sexuality, and of course, 13 Cubed.
We're doing a sequel to that.
Yeah, that's, it's a few months away because we're finishing up the health book right now. But with all those things in mind, some of the things I see, remember I'm telling you that they're pushing you toward group sex because that's part of New World religion. So here, things that used to be in pornography magazines are now on the front page of everything. So here is I don't know what she's called now, I guess she's a sexpert. Her name is Tracy, C-O-X.
Oh, right.
Okay, Tracy Cox.
Perfect name.
Yeah. She says you can have a safe threesome and, improve your love life. And so you're supposed to buy sex toys, you're supposed to shave your partner, you're supposed to blindfold each other, beat each other, whip each other, tie each other up. I mean, really.
Oh, someone's been watching us.
This does not promote intimacy. This promotes a lot of animal group sex type behavior. It's disgusting. Then she goes on to say that women should now take a sex bot because they're better.
A
sex bot.
Okay, go ahead.
Because they're better than men.
Well,
they can eliminate the risk of STIs and unwanted pregnancies. Well, duh, I think so. And now, remember, I've told you before.
Unless they get a little bot baby in there.
According to this, the first thing they did, they made it so every woman should have a dildo in their purse.
Janet, watch your language.
Isn't that what they're called?
I don't want to discuss it with you.
And so now, not only that, but you should have the whole body parts. So, and then they say that this woman thinks that women should be involved in technology, or the development of robots. I mean, because really, only men.
I'm going to censor your computer work.
Okay, well, I'm going to get back to that topic, but I'm going to diverge, but not for long. That in China, there was a 13-year-old boy who was married to a 13-year-old girl. Because remember, I also tell you pedophilia is going to be part of the New World Religion. But this is in China, real China, nothing you can do about it, but it's still in your head, right? And the bride was 5 months pregnant at 13, and so the parents insisted on the marriage, even though apparently China is kind of trying to discourage it, but it's not exactly illegal, blah, blah. So, and keeping that in mind, now there is a woman in one of your favorite countries,
What?
the UK.
Ah.
She is the founder.
I spell it Y-U-K.
Juliet Grayson founded this organization called Specialist Treatment Organization for the Prevention of Sexual Offending. Okay? She suggests that child sex dolls could be used to treat pedophiles in the same way that giving methadone to drug addicts should stop them from using heroin.
So let me see if I understand. Instead of treating them in a proper way, you just give them a child blow-up doll.
Well,
right?
I don't think it's a blow-up. I think it's supposed to be like a real, appear to be a real life one kind of
That's
thing.
even worse, isn't it?
Yeah, well, none of it, in my opinion, is healthy. She says that in the UK alone, 750,000 men have a sexual attraction to children, and we have read the studies where they're trying to say that all men have that.
No.
No, and I agree. That's an what's the word? Aberration.
You can't say that.
An aberration, in my opinion. Anyway, so she claims that this way they can manage their urges in a safe and law-abiding way so they never abuse a real child.
Right, because that'll work.
Then, apparently, there was a former primary school governor and a church warden that were found guilty of importing an obscene life-size child sex doll into Britain. Apparently, it's a crime to do that. They're mostly made in China and Hong Kong. This was a 72-year-old man admitted to importing and having sex with this child doll, which is anatomically detailed and correct. And then they say the border officials are reporting seeing more lifelike silicone sex aids, which weigh around 55 pounds or 25 kilos imported into Britain. They cost several thousand pounds and are sold on Amazon, eBay, and according to the National Crime Agency. And the border police have seized 123 dolls since March 2016. So, anyway, I thought,
It's very
here we go.
sad.
And then there's convicts are saying that they should be able to use sex dolls because that will end sexual abuse in prisons. And this man who was pushing this forward is an inmate serving 17 years for drug dealing. And he said he was inspired by a documentary about men living with sex dolls because he noticed that all these men look very happy and stress-free. Now, get this one. He says sex dolls wouldn't only help with prisoners' frustrations because the dolls would have to be manually blown up. Smokers would have a chance to exercise their lungs.
Oh, my goodness. Seriously, because that's not going to stop smokers.
It's not?
No.
How would you know?
Because trust me, that's not going to stop.
I guess I'll have to trust you then.
They would be frustrated because they don't have the oxygen to blow up the doll.
I know. Okay, so then listen to this one, which somehow I missed this story, but apparently Europe's first sex doll brothel opened in Barcelona.
Of course.
In February, offering appointments with one of its 4 lifelike sex dolls at a rate of 80 euros per hour. But because of, I guess, all the publicity, they were forced to relocate to a mystery location. So we don't know where that is.
Nobody knows where they are. That's brilliant.
And then Professor Noel Sharkey, who's a professor of robotics at Sheffield University, is told recently at a science festival that the rise of love machines could have terrible consequences for humanity because the one he was addressing was for teenagers so they could lose their virginity to a robot. And he warns that that could ruin human relationships, but I'm sure that's what they're designed to do. Yeah. But he goes on to say, it's not a problem having sex with a machine.
No.
But if it's your first time, it's a problem, because then you don't know what's a man and what's a woman. Anyway, I thought that was, again...
So, if you have sex with a machine, you don't know the difference between a man and a woman?
Well, but that could confuse you, apparently.
I see.
So, I don't know. But they're specially designed...
What country was he from?
This was...
Oh, Britain. Makes sense.
Yeah. So the point being is they're going to specially design these robotic dolls for teenagers for their first sexual experience. Okay. Then Now this one, again, I missed. This happened in December of 2016. I don't know if you saw this one or not. Probably not. You would have told me. But a Chilean minister, Luis Felipe Cespedes, was criticized by the country's female president after accepting a Christmas present. Guess what it was? It was a sex doll. And he received, it was hosted by the Association of Exporters and Manufacturers, and taped across the doll's mouth was a card that read, "To stimulate the economy." Now, they showed a picture of this guy, and all these men are dressed in business suits, and they have a blow-up doll, and I will tell you, it's very clear. It's a naked female doll, and she is, in all ways, anatomically correct, which exactly isn't because technically the private parts between a woman are between her legs, but this is like in front so everybody could see it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was not exactly anatomically correct, mm-hmm. even though that they're claiming that it was. Mm-hmm. But the Chilean president, Michelle Bachelet, said in response to the outrage that the struggle for respect for all women has been a guiding principle of my two administrations, and what happened at the dinner cannot be tolerated. Because these are these men.
At least she said that.
Yes, but again, remember, shock and awe. That's how they open up the frequency
so
for everybody.
So basically she gave them a Chile reception.
She did. But, and of course the people would be on her side, but the thing is here are these men in business suits holding up this doll with, it's just totally, and they don't give gifts unless it's been pre-approved. I mean, they just don't do these things. I've been to those high-level type of events, and everybody is aware of everything that's happening. So, anyway, then the last one. This story was actually sent to me by several people, and this was probably the biggest story of all, if they can get any bigger. This is about Planned Parenthood, because Planned Parenthood is a federally funded organization. And they issued new guidelines on how to talk, or I don't know if it's new or original, because maybe it's not been done before. They issued guidelines on how to talk to preschoolers about transgenderism and masturbation.
Listen to me, preschoolers don't even know what time of day it is.
Exactly. So the thing is, and so when I first got these articles, I actually went to the Planned Parenthood website because I thought, maybe this is, more of the false news, and sometimes people take it out of context. And so I went on there, and I did read through it, and what I'm telling you now is just one or two things, but I mean, I could spend days on there reading what they are telling parents to do.
I wouldn't spend a minute.
Well, I didn't spend any more time, but the point being is, this is a real news story, which to me is like, okay, you've got to be kidding, right? But anyway, so this is, for example, when it comes to gender, ideas about what it means to be a girl or a boy are everywhere. And these ideas have a big influence on your preschooler. Learn how to teach your kid that their gender doesn't limit them. How to talk about different kinds of families, how to know if your kid is transgender, and more. This is for a preschooler, right? The site explains that not all boys have penises and not all girls have vulvas.
Liars.
You can say that most girls have vulvas and most boys have penises
and
testicles.
All do. All have the parts that are supposed to be. Not according to this.
While the most simple answer is that girls have vulvas and boys have penises and testicles, that answer isn't true for every boy and girl. Boy, girl, man, and woman are words that describe gender identity. And some people with the gender identities boy or man have vulvas. And some with the gender identity girl or woman have penis and testicles.
So I will say that not all people who are in control of Planned Parenthood have a brain.
Your genitals don't make you a boy or a girl, says the site. So, the only reason, and we wrote about this way back in 2002, the only case is chromosomal. If your chromosomes
and programming.
And there are some people who chromosomally cannot be labeled male or female. But that is very rare. And back then there was a society which we wrote about in 2002 called the Intersex Society. And at that time period they actually just made the decisions, and they usually changed them into a female because that was an easier thing to do. Right. But the true, in my opinion, the true intersex people here, they fought to try and make their own decisions and to maintain whatever their sexual, outer appearance was until they became old enough to make up their own mind what they wanted, or maybe they just wanted to stay the way they were. So point being is unless you have the chromosomes, you are either a male or a female.
Yeah, just look between your legs,
Yeah.
and that will tell you what you are for the most part.
For the most part, I would say most people. I mean, there are a few
Yeah.
exceptions. So
Correct.
now, go ahead.
I just have a couple of special thank yous.
Okay.
I have a special thank you to Dr. Carlos Jaramillo in Quito, Ecuador, from the Instituto de Bionutrición and Pan American University for the wonderful, amazing webinar that we did on August 2nd. There were hundreds of people
That was great.
on that webinar, and it was bilingual. And also a very special thanks to the Honorable Dr. Charles McWilliams, the Grand Master of the Sacred Medical Order of the Knights of Hope, for the amazing interviews on alternative medicine, metaphysics, and the Templars. We've done 6 interviews already.
And that's on our special webpage, expansions.com, and look under SMOC and /Templars, because this organization is working, bringing back basically the hidden Templars.
We are bringing back
Yes.
Templars. And I'll get to that in a moment. Also, quickly, since I will be home for the rest of August and part of September, I'm inviting you for the umpteenth time to send in questions that you'd like me to answer on the podcast. That means a question, not a paragraph or a need for a chapter of a book.
Or a personal consultation.
It's a general question that is interesting to everyone. And you can send that to customersupport@expansions.com. Now, for September, we do have our September Spectacular class, which will be September 4 to 9 or something like this.
That's a week, that's all I know.
Yeah. And so we still have a couple of seats open on that one. Then we have, of course, the October bus trip, which
It's full.
booked up already, so you're out of luck on that one. Then in October, November, I will be doing a weekend seminar and consultations in Belgium. And then from there, I will be going directly to Tampa for an investiture for the Knights of Hope, as well as a seminar, which will be done on my birthday, November 5th. Remember, the 5th of November. Remember the gifts, the presents, and the gold. It's my form of the poem. Mm-hmm. So you can bring that to me in Tampa. Then, this hasn't been finalized yet.
But we're working on it.
But December, January, we will be doing a special seminar on the island of Nevis at the headquarters for the Sacred Medical Order of the Knights of Hope, and they will be putting together medical packages for the clinic there for you to come, and also there'll be a special investiture on New Year's Eve, and we will be reviving officially on New Year's Eve the new Templar Order on the island of Nevis.
And this will be open to the public. If you're interested, contact customer support at expansions.com or watch the website, because hopefully we will be having details posted soon.
And then we have, of course, the January class.
Yeah, so we have lots of things going on. Be sure that you like our Facebook pages, and be sure that you get an Expansions membership, less than $1 a day. Be sure you get your books so that you don't become weird just because
Like me.
the outer global elite tell you to be weird. So we have lots of things. The Hyperspace Helper. We have our newer books, Hyperspace Plus, because people wanted more, and Healing Archetypes and Symbols. And I will say that the last post that Christian did was of this particular book.
He did. That was the last thing he did.
That now he knows how to use the symbols, and he was always working very diligently to promote our books. So anyway, we really appreciate what Christian has done to make the world aware of our work, and I know that
his daughter will be carrying that
she's
forward.
a beautiful soul with a lot of knowledge.
And we'll be working with her.
And Christian will be working with us from the other side, as a lot of people who passed on.
Right. And also this past week, Jim Mars, the researcher,
and author,
passed away. I met him in 2000 or so.
Yeah, and what did he say to you?
He said to me, because we had dinner, and he said, I may not be able to tell everyone that the Queen of England is a reptilian shapeshifter, but you can. And so I did.
Yeah. And we just did again. So
I just did it again.
a lot of people have been passing over for whatever their reasons are. It is what it is. But in the meantime, I would tell you, you don't know what happens sometimes from one day to the next. Take advantage of it. If you want to do some of these things, do it. Because honestly, you don't know what your next day is going to bring. Christian was only 38 years old.
38 years old, and Jim Morris
73.
Yeah. And so I will tell you, people, you want something, get it. You want to go someplace, go. Don't worry about money. Don't worry about your time. Don't worry about anything. Do what's in front of you that your heart tells you to do.
Yeah, and don't fight with people either.
No regrets.
That's right. Don't fight with people. Don't call nasty names. Don't do whatever. If it doesn't fit your cup of tea, just don't drink it. Go somewhere else.
Just go away. If you don't like something, leave.
Right, but no nastiness. If the world doesn't need it, life is too short, and don't say you want peace and then do something else.
Exactly.
Okay?
All right.
So with that said, we thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to visit with you, whether it's here, whether it's on one of our classes or tours, or
and
whether it's on the blog.
This podcast will not be sabotaged.
Hopefully. So you take care, and we will see you again soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.